Hello and welcome to another Not Chilli podcast. Today, Josh and I sat down and we watched Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg and just had a good old time. It's amazing how these conversations, part of the reason why I love them, is that they just devolve or evolve into such a history of things. And one thing in particular that stands out in this particular podcast is Josh's love for Spielberg. I'm always concerned about the fact that if we do another Spielberg film, which we will inevitably do, that we will dive into exactly the same conversation about his, the way he shoots, how Josh, loves the way he works and all these things. So you can certainly see the love that Josh has for that particular director, and he can go on for days. But we also go into special effects in particular. I mean, this movie is basically just about special effects and a little bit about the history of the company, and also we talk about how this isn't an acting film. We just dive into a lot of things with this film, and I had a great time recording it. So I hope you guys have a really good time listening to it. Thanks very much for listening, and feel free to share and all that other business. Here you go. Episode number 6. What are we talking about here?
It's your podcast.
It's not just my podcast. It's kind of like our podcast. You're the only person, even though I was supposed to interview so many people. I'm I'm going to interview all my friends. It's just the Josh and Piot show.
Book them up, man. Book them up.
I want to, but then it becomes this
Makes
thing.
it look like I have nothing else to do.
Is that not the truth? Do we not have
I have plenty of things to do.
I got things I should do. Just a lot of things I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could all be working right now.
We could all be. This is the curse of freelance. You always feel guilty. Constantly.
Yeah. Do you know the funny thing is, everyone always says about you work from home, or you work that kind of stuff. I could never do that. You know why? I would be procrastinating too much.
Yeah.
You'll be homeless very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah. You'll find a way.
Yeah.
It might be rushed. It might be last minute, but you'll do it.
Well, because the other one is they go, oh, that's like a dream, right? And it is fantastic in 180 ways. And then the 6 ways in which it sucks really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Because work is always near you. And, but I mean, you mostly work out of home, so it's different. But a lot of editing and stuff like that, you have that thing of it's always kind of hanging around, or the spaces might not be separated enough, or for me because I put so much awesome hardware into my computer for work, it's an awesome gaming machine, so it's that's where my PC game.
Yeah, I don't have Pac-Man on my recorder or anything.
Yeah. That's a funny thing. All the negative things are mostly to do with your state of mind with freelance, not the practical things of I have to get up and go to work, or I have to suffer traffic, I have to do this, I have to do that. Anyway, that's obviously what we're talking about today.
That's right. We're just talking about the freelance industry and how much it really blows.
It's awesome.
We should probably actually talk about the thing that we're supposed to talk about. All right. So, obviously, we're talking about Ready Player One.
Obviously.
Because,
couldn't you tell?
Couldn't you tell with the puns?
Yeah.
And obviously, first of all, the most important thing to say, I think, right at the beginning is that, hey, spoiler, we're not going to tell you what this movie's about. We're just going to talk about what we liked about it in all kind of aspects. So, anyone who's listening, those 6 people who downloaded my podcast or our
Told
podcast.
You.
Yeah, no, it just rolls off the tongue. This is not a spoiler-free podcast. You will need to either have read the book or watch the movies, but I will say something.
From what I'm gathering,
doesn't matter if you've read the book.
Either watched the film or have read the book.
Yeah, I think if you read the book, you would understand the premise of the whole thing. If you watch the movie, then you totally get into whatever the hell we're talking about. But I'll get into that later on when it comes to my kind of feelings. So I guess we're once again, I don't want to talk about what the film's about because we know.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But I guess why did you want to watch it? You go first. What was your reasoning to watch it?
Spielberg.
Of course it was. I knew that. I should have just said it because it didn't even matter.
And it's weird. I didn't see it at the cinema. It's really...
It's such a cinema movie. Popcorn. And...
It is. It felt like I wasn't at the cinema very long. I don't know. But whatever. But at the same time, I
mean, who is Spielberg, really?
That's an episode.
Yeah. Oh, God, it is.
Yeah, That was it.
Yeah, just Spielberg mainly. Not even like the references and things like that. Like, I didn't actually read the book for that reason.
I'd have an interest in it, I suppose. We'll get into this a bit later on, I guess, but like I used to love references a lot over sort of the last 6 or 7 years as geek culture and stuff has sort of gone a bit more mainstream. I've generally found it more annoying than anything else, where it's sort of like, do you get it?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
So that's what I was expecting, to be honest.
Okay, no, that's cool. I'll cut you off there because I know we're going to talk about that a bit later. Because I mean, this movie has got so many of those kind of references. So I guess for me, it was because I read the book. I didn't actually even think that Spielberg directed it until you know got the look in your eye where you're like, oh, Spielberg. So I really just wanted to see. I was excited when I read the book. I was like, this is a movie. Like you just read and you're like, yes, this is a script almost in itself. Though I feel like it needed to be a 6-hour movie or a 4-hour or 5-hour movie. Like,
as in if they directly translated.
That's right.
Book?
Yeah. Because like we'll get into all that later on. But like I don't actually have any qualms with the book to movie relationship in this particular situation. I see them as separate. Very much so. And this is a great example of that separation. But we'll get into those kind of details when we kind of get to the summing up of the film, the cinema film. Okay, well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's not really much more to say about that. It's just going to be...
Yeah, mine was easy. It was one word.
Yeah, that's right. And me, it was just spectacle and the book, really. Because it's such a cool universe. The whole idea of it. I mean, it's Earth and it's, you know, it's our universe, but it's such a cool blend of a lot of really interesting concepts that are of our time that we could foresee. Yeah, and I guess we're jumping straight into technical because that was an easy transition. What wacky, like, technical film. Now, I was talking about, like, I mean, we're talking about cinematography here, but we should probably talk about, mostly, it's like, looks like 70% CG, which is awesome.
I mean,
it suits it.
Yeah.
It's about a video game world.
But, you know, it's important to bear in mind that you still have, like, an incredibly accomplished and talented Janusz Kaminski at the, you know, behind the camera. And I think that, like, it is, his touch is still very, very, very clear in all of the CG stuff. You know, one of the things is like, as you were saying throughout the film, right? Like, oh, I'm so glad this isn't cutting every, like, 3 seconds.
Yeah, that was such a big deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, Spielberg doesn't do that, and he never has.
Yeah.
So...
neither does Jackie Chan in action sequences. And that's one of the reasons why I have a huge appreciation for this film, as well as Jackie Chan movies, because it's one shot, you're seeing what's going on. There's no reason to cut unless you're trying to hide something. And I always feel like if I walk away from an action sequence and it's just a blur to me, unless that was the intention, unless, like, you know, you're supposed to be in a blur, you're supposed to be in the head of the character or something like that. But generally speaking, if you're supposed to just kind of enjoy it and want to see what's going on, you want to see how amazingly talented and how cool this all is, you don't do that with fast cuts. Let it breathe.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's interesting, right, is because in terms of his work, this is closest to Tintin than anything else.
Okay. Never seen it.
Really?
No, I didn't see it. I know the reference to it, but I want to.
It's completely shot with the not completely, but overwhelmingly, it's shot using the Avatar setup in New Zealand.
The 2 like red cameras or whatever.
No. His James Cameron's brother is a camera engineer. So Tintin,
which is obviously linked to this film because of its CGI.
Yeah. So the thing about Spielberg is that he doesn't do a film, or he doesn't approach it using a technique that will stop him from being himself as a creative, and so. I mean, that's why Jurassic Park, right, is such a line in the sand film. It is such a a point at which film changed because the obvious way to make that film is to lock the camera off every time there's CGI and to do all sorts of things that make it really easy. Don't have rain, don't do this, don't do any of that stuff. But they had like the first motion tracking of living creatures running through a scene. They had the first flesh CGI. They tried so many different things for the first time because Spielberg was like, hey, I'm only doing this CG thing if it's not going to like stop me from doing the shots that I want, because I need those shots to build the drama and the tension and the emotion that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so landmark about that film, right? He didn't change what he was doing. And that's what I when I went in to watch Tintin, that's what I was so shocked by. He had that same approach. You watch that film, and if you knew nothing about it, well, not nothing, but if you knew anything about Spielberg, you would come away and go, wow, that's like him. He hasn't changed how he makes the film because of the technology. Mm-hmm. And this film is exactly like that. He hasn't changed the way that he approaches shots,
storytelling and stuff like that.
Yeah, any of his visual storytelling, like none of it is different. He still has all the same techniques. It's that's a bit of a ramble, but that's what I really, really enjoyed about it, is that despite you did see in a lot of the wide shots and stuff like that, though, he really took a lot of joy in the freedom, in the same way that George Lucas with the prequel trilogy of Star Wars would do these incredible, epic, sweeping moves, of the camera before maybe like a conversation or something. And there's quite a lot of that kind of stuff happening in Ready Player One. I'm just looking up how it was shot. Fucking hell, he's so amazing. What do you think the budget for that film was?
120 million.
I thought it was about 250.
Yeah, no, I was
175.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. Like, I was being conservative intentionally.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. You probably know exactly what you're talking about there. I mean, I'm just impressed by it. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to get onto, because I was like, look, the CGI in this was so, how to put it, it fitted so well with what he was trying to do in this film. From the real world to the real world was done really well in a way that was believable and interesting. When the digital world was amazing, and then those times where they blended the two, and you went like the Shining thing, which was just like we were both turned to each other at that point and throughout that thing, being like, we're trying to figure out if they got the actual film and just popped these CGI characters in, or if they just shot it or recreated it or did it all digitally, like whatever the fuck they did. I'm
99% sure that they redid it.
They must have.
They did it. They had to do it because the issue with it is that like there were so many shots in it that I was like, well, that shot's not in Shining. That shot's not.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I hadn't seen it in so long.
So I think what they did was they just took a different course in terms of, instead of using the stylized visuals of the Oasis, they used a separate sort of thing where the approach was to be photorealistic. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was funny is, like, at no point they contrasted throughout the film. When there were bits like that, they contrasted, but it never felt at odds or clashing. Mm-hmm. That was really, really... That sequence was just phenomenal. I mean, the thing that's awesome about it is it shows you what can be done with CGI. Is what's so cool about this film.
Yeah,
is that aspects of that which were CG did not look like CG, particularly the carpet.
Yeah,
the carpet looked unbelievable.
Yeah. Can I just say that the company, I mean, obviously this is to do with the budget as well, but the company that did the CGI, the level of detail,
it would have been island.
Everything. Yeah. It was just unreal. Like, let's just pretend this movie was crap and there was nothing good about it. The CGI on itself was just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, of course they had the luxury of being like, this is a digital world we're recreating, but it was just like, I mean, I remember there's that car sequence that happens towards the beginning of it. Just just little things like the way that something would blow up and this, and they didn't need to have 50 cars or whatever it was in that thing. They could have had 20 because it would have been much less time to render and it still would have been pretty effective, but they just did it so well, and all the cars had like thought about them. Each of the cars that weren't the IOI or that company's cars were all unique and interesting. They all had personalities.
Yeah.
All the mechanisms that those cars had thought about how would this mechanism work. It wasn't just, and a magic saw appears out of the car. It was like, this folds back, this claws out, and this, and then suddenly you've got a saw, and the way that cuts into another car, it, like, all those little details, just like, oh man.
They are. Almost every single important moment of CGI that's ever happened has been them. So I mean, they are just remarkable. The only one that I can really think of that wasn't them and sort of came out of left field, but out of necessity, is
the Peter Jackson's, the one that he works with. What are they?
Weta, yeah, Weta Digital. So there's Weta, and then there's Weta Digital. So Weta does all the model work, prosthetics.
Could you imagine being like, is it ILM?
ILM, yeah, Industrial Light and Magic.
Could you imagine like going into a room with them and being like, okay, so I want to create, name it, whatever it is. Like, I want to create a universe where everything, and we want to fly through the entire universe, and we want to see. They're like, yeah, we can do that. Just it'll take this long, and this is how much it'll cost. I feel like that's the only thing that the only conversation they'll have is that.
And they started it by being extremely
new to the technology, weren't they? Were they just early?
Well, they helped create it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
they weren't just early adopters; they were creating it. I mean, their first CGI element was in the original Star Wars in 1977. People tend to think that on the little screen when they get the briefing of how to attack the Death Star, most people think that's a hand-drawn animation. When it's like, but it has a 3D look. That is a CGI element.
Wow,
and
that's a difficult one to do early.
Well, we have to keep in mind that in order to do that, they had to solder together the computer. So they had to make a custom computer to do that. From scratch, right? Because in those days, there wasn't 1977. There wasn't a personal computer with software that you could sit down and do stuff. That didn't exist yet. So it was, okay, this is the task that this computer needs to do. Let's go make that computer. I think at least one of those guys that helped on that project ended up at Pixar, but at least one of them, I'm 99% sure. But the thing that's interesting about ILM, who started like they were founded for Star Wars in 1976. The type of risk taking that they do, like they went through 75% of their budget for the original Star Wars, and George Lucas threw all of it out because it was terrible. It wasn't up to standard. And
holy shit.
Every effect that you see in the original Star Wars, in the original prints, obviously, not the ones since, but all the original effects you see on that was made on 25% of the budget that they had for special effects and visual effects.
So a lot of failure before they got to where they were.
It's a lot of failure. When Dennis Muren, right? He was one of the top guys at ILM. He's one of the brains behind it all. You know, the T-1000 is his, which came from the James Cameron's liquid. There's a liquid tentacle in The Abyss that imitates people's faces. Oh my
god, that sounds so creepy.
It is, but then it like has a thing where it's beautiful. Like it's creepy at first, and then so he was involved in all that stuff. But when they got to Jurassic Park, he told Spielberg that they could do the dinosaurs before he knew how. So.
That's interesting.
Spielberg was like, wow, that's amazing. He's like, yeah, we can do this. We can do the dinosaurs. Don't do them go motion. Do them this way. And he's like, oh, cool. He's like, then I rushed back to ILM and we fucking got to work.
Can you imagine? Oh, that's amazing.
I think it's a case of like all the theory was in his head.
Yeah.
He knew that you could do it.
I've had that kind of feeling before. Not obviously. I've had people come up to me and be like, okay, I need to get this recording and this is where we're shooting. I'm like, all right. Like,
oh yeah,
it works in my head, but this is what it's going to take. And
I think he saw a project where he could change an industry. Mm-hmm. I think that's how broad-minded he was about it.
Yeah.
So I think so if that's what your background is, if that's the origins of this organization and they've never left that culture behind, that's how you have a film like Ready Player One. It wasn't just a tangent. That was about this. So that's where you get that level of detail. That's where you get that. I mean, they're phenomenally expensive.
Oh, of course. But you're paying for that experience.
You're paying for experience. You're paying for a gazillion hours. You're paying for millions of dollars in
R&D.
In everything. Yeah. Everything. When they change shaders, right? So in video games, right? You sort of go what graphics look like 10 years ago versus now. It's like the shaders of how textures and light and all that kind of stuff interact. Imagine that they make new ones for that for CGI. It's like when you watch the Star Wars Episode 2 and then you go to Star Wars Episode 3, the difference between Yoda's skin in Episode 2 and Episode 3, it's like, as far as I know, they went back and they re-rendered him. Definitely in Episode 1, they went back and they replaced the puppet, which was a weird-looking puppet. But they replaced him with the Episode 3 shaders. It's amazing. They pour all this money into this stuff. They had to develop for. They did Warcraft, which is so good. They developed. Yeah. They had to. That's actually another funny thing, but they had to create a new system for hair because there was so much hair in that film because of the orcs. They're so hairy.
That's so hairy.
Yeah, but another film, I'm pretty sure that they did Dinosaur, which was a Disney film which mixed CGI with plate shots that they shot all around the world. I'm 99% sure that was them, and the very, very first, even if it wasn't though, this is just an example of how this stuff happens. There was grass. There was grass. They could make grass, but no one had ever really made very much hair in CGI. So they just reprogrammed the grass, and that's how they got the lemurs to have hair. Yep. So you just people just do these things. That's not what that was for. Yeah.
And then that with sorry, I'm not trying to discredit these guys, but I feel like in the film industry you do that on a lot of things. The idea that's oh, you've got this thing and you've got to I've got a microphone, for example, and I've got to use it this way. Yeah. This is the only way to use the microphone. I'm well, why can't I hide it under here and flip it? Reminds me of a lab technique, which I was thinking, this is the way to do it. This is what you're supposed to do. It just wasn't working. And then some other guy's I'll just grab this and put it like this. I'm that's never going to work. And then did. I'm holy shit, I should stop being a pretentious prick with sound. So. Yeah, I think film is one of those mediums where it's so important to learn how to do things properly so that you understand how to break
the rules in the best way.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't matter what that is. That's the great thing about filmmaking, aside from any other medium, is that literally every single type of work is required for a film. You need people, you need accountants, you need carpenters, you need electricians, you need every industry that exists to get this shit. You need software people, you need fucking everything. And that's what's so exciting about it is so if all of those industries were interacting in a way that was only exactly the right way to be doing things all the time, or the way that everyone's always done it all the time, films would still look like how they did in the 1920s.
Yeah.
So it is just really exciting. The point we're really making is just when you have groundbreaking people behind stuff, you can end up seeing an end result that's really interesting. And I think that and this goes back into the sort of technique point of things, being a massive Spielberg fan, and now, as of now, I've seen every single film of his, which I only had a few gaps in there. I think it was 3 films of his that I hadn't seen, and then I was caught up as they were coming out. Mm-hmm. Having watched all of them and studied them and loved all but about 5.
Yeah.
They're all good, some okay.
You
know what I mean? Not really. There's some. You can't have a career that big and
not have a dud.
Yeah. I think the thing that I find really interesting is that when I went to watch Bridge of Spies, which is his, I think, 2016 film. The first time I watched that film, it finished, and I went, all right. And I was talking to someone about it afterwards. And they went, "Oh, wasn't that brilliant? It was brilliant." And I went, "It was good." And then I went, "They were saying it was so amazing. Like, I'll have to watch it again." I watched it again. The issue that I came away with was, from the audience's point of view, I'm talking about, by the way, obviously not from his point of view, and I'll get to that in a second. He so effortlessly makes a great film, and it's so fluid now, and just happens now, without sort of, even sort of 20-something years ago with this, you sort of go, oh, there's that sort of crack there, oh, there's that sort of like, crease, there's this sort of thing. It's just, there's none of that now, to the point that it seems so easy. So and I felt that in this film as well. It was like, but it was also the first film I've seen probably since Tintin, where it seemed like he was having a really good time making it. And again, like what I was going to say is that there's this documentary called Spielberg, and he is extensively interviewed in it. And one of the things he talks about is his constant state on set, according to him, is sheer panic. But the number one most important thing is, and this is true for any director that doesn't do this is not doing their job particularly well. Whatever is happening in your head, if it's anything other than complete confidence, you can't share that with the set, right? If you're panicking, you can't let the set know. And it's nothing to do with, like, it's not wank. It's not.
Everyone's looking to you.
You have to have an answer to every single thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why you have an AD and production manager and producer and all these people.
Surround yourself with professionals for that reason.
Surround people with things that basically a director simply cannot take that amount of information in their brain.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not possible. So, that's what those other people are there for, to be the bedrock for your creativity. And so they do all this incredible work in their various fields that allows you to stand on top of that and tell everyone how you're going to do it. So the thing for him is that when he reflects on his work, he feels that the work he doesn't like is the work where he wasn't panicking. And so when he'll get to a set and like he'll set up the camera, it's why he's not very popular with bigger money people in Hollywood anymore, why his budgets aren't. He's always had quite reasonable budgets. When you sort of look at things and go, fuck, if someone else made this, it would cost double that. It's always sort of seemed that way with his stuff, but he doesn't seem to get access to even larger money. One of the things, and this was on the War of the Worlds special features, he talks about the fact that like he hates storyboards. Pre-visualization. Fine with storyboards, but storyboards are something that he can adapt camera placement from, whereas pre-visualization is something that financiers go, that's how you're shooting it. Because if you don't, the money changes. Because his approach is, these are the storyboards, get to set. All right, I know in the storyboard the camera is here, but it's going to be here and it's going to be on a crane. Cool. Because like he says, I don't know.
Not like Nolan.
No. He says, I have no idea what I'm going to do exactly until I get to a set, because that's when he looks at a space and he goes, oh, I know how this will look good, from this angle and this angle and this angle. That's how he works. And it's because he comes from the all of these things world, no CGI, no this, that, and that's where he starts.
No CGI.
Yeah. Imagine you said that to someone today. Okay, you can make any film you want, but you can't have CGI. And imagine if whatever their idea might have been crazy. Like, there's so many things that are just not possible now. If you wanted to set a film in Sydney and you wanted to have a wide shot in 1970, all right, you better get some CGI going. Yeah. Because that's not what Sydney looked like in 1970. Yeah. So, that's the world that he comes from, and the thing that I love about him, and this film doesn't really change to me, just because the technology that there is behind it. He always carries his traditional approach into every single project.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. And the only other note that I would say is that I really love when ILM is working on something when Janusz Kaminski is the DOP, because he, I'm sure, as you would have probably noticed, if you watch his work with Spielberg, which is every Spielberg film from Schindler's List onwards, with the exception of about the first 3 or 4 films that they worked on together, after that point, I think actually from about Saving Private Ryan onwards, 1997 they shot that, 98 release, he seemed to get his way with Spielberg of overexposing highlights. So I don't know if you noticed, but if you watch that film again, or any film they've worked on between 1998 and now, over the last 20 years together, it's interesting. His highlights are always blown out.
Right.
And it's always interesting to see ILM, who does basically all the CGI that Spielberg ever does. It's always interesting to see how they handle that. Handle the fact that he likes to have the highlights blown out. It's quite...
Yeah, right. I didn't even think of that concept, because that's just, the information is lost when it's blown out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, they shoot on film, so he gets rid of it.
Yeah.
Like, it was never there. So if you shoot digitally with dynamic range and all that kind of stuff, it's like you got so much still there. But Janusz Kaminski, it's like, it's done.
I like that in a cinematographer. I like cinematographer that has a bit of balls.
It's absolute, right? There's so much confidence.
In camera.
Yeah, and I like him. I think that I think it's one of the best marriages of creative minds in cinema. Like,
could you imagine being in that? Like, that'd be a dream to just, and I hope to be able to do that, like there's a few directors which I'm really excited for that are my generation. And that would be amazing to just be like, okay, cool. We're going to make basically 1 or 2 films a year. And we're going to do that for the rest of our lives. And they're going to be pretty awesome. And sometimes they're not going to be awesome, but we're always going to be able to make movies. That would be the dream. Anyway, that's talking about my desires and my dreams. And,
but I mean, the other long relationship with Spielberg is obviously John Williams as well.
Did he do this?
I am 99%. It sure as hell sounded like he did.
It did. That's what I was thinking too. But then again, it's because there's so many movies they referenced. I feel like John Williams had some kind of thing to do with. Which this leads on to a really good kind of point that I was going to... This is the other technical aspect. He wasn't? Well, because then the sound of this was really amazing. I mean, I always find Spielberg doesn't... I don't know if this is just me, but I don't think there's a lot of Spielberg movies that I've watched where... Yeah, go, what?
No, sorry, you go.
Okay. I was just going to say that, like, I feel like Spielberg's a little bit more functional with his sound recording. I don't even know if he does... I mean, that film probably was all ADR or whatever it was. It didn't sound like the locations they were in. Probably because a lot of those locations never existed. And I thought that was really interesting. Spielberg's, in my experience, with obviously a few exceptions and especially technical exceptions, generally the stuff that he does sounds a little bit too clean to my ears.
It's quite funny because in the actual overall of his career, no, definitely not.
Yeah, I might only be thinking like, because I was watching a bit of Jurassic Park the other day and I was like, oh, that sounds...
No, he likes dirty sound.
He likes dirty sound.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
He likes a clean version of dirty sound. So Spielberg has, for dialogue, one of the more interesting careers for sound. It's really, really worthwhile watching all of his films, but you can sort of go through and go, I'll watch this one, then I'll skip 5 years, and I'll watch this one, then I'll skip 5 years, and I'll watch this one. And you'll get the idea. But like if you start with Jewel was for TV, so kind of just throw that away for a sec. But like Sugarland Express is a great place to start in terms of his feature film career. And you go that and Jaws and Close Encounters, you can really bundle those all together, all the way up to Indiana Jones is separate. That has a Lucas influence. So, and also it's just a different style of film. E.T., that goes with Close Encounters and the sound design approach to all that stuff. Schindler's List and Jurassic Park are kind of like this blended mode where they do have that in the 1970s. A lot of the approach to sound became quite popular after when MASH came out, and MASH basically was mixed so that the background sound was around the same level as the dialogue, so you're kind of like listening through the chaos. And so you have a lot of films of that period, like look, honestly, I love that style. I not quite as far as MASH, like that's a very extreme.
It also
example.
sounds a little bit like a set, like MASH has that the reflection.
I mean the film though.
Oh right, sorry.
The film MASH. So the film MASH, no, because that was the stuff that I'm referring to is mostly shot on location.
Yep.
So then you have films like All the President's Men and Network and Rocky and all that kind of stuff. Everyone was kind of working in this like pool of what sound was then, and they were allowing the world to come into the soundscape, as opposed to it sort of being the 40s and 50s stuff, which was very much like, and now everything else stops and listen to what the actor has to say.
Yeah, right. See, I'm a bit of a fan of that too. I think personality of a location should kind of bleed into your dialogue should be clear and should have a lot of like, it should have a lot of God, I wish I knew. Presence is the word I'm thinking of, but that doesn't mean the ambience should disappear. But then the ambience should be. It's hard to
This was about one of the cleanest films that he has had. I would go to say ever. In terms of audio approach, it was quite Hollywood versus Spielbergian. Because he really does like the environment to be there. I know that a lot of people would talk about like The Sound of Saving Private Ryan, but that's a really one-off basis that has a lot of Spielbergian sound approach in it, but it also happens to be set in an extremely loud environment. So if you skip forward, like one of my favorite Spielberg films in terms of looking at the whole approach of his, where everything that he does is wrapped into one thing with a bow, like the way that he approaches drama, the way he approaches suspense, thrills, comedy, action, everything. There is a snippet of every single bit of that in War of the Worlds. And the first 20 minutes, the sound design, particularly the dialogue, is a really good thing to watch of how he does stuff. So when he shoots a shot that is far away, either zoomed in to be close or it's a wide shot, he's like, okay, everything that you can see, basically, you can hear that.
Yeah.
And so that's what he really likes to have.
I was just looking up at the sound recorders. He has. It looked like he has a few that he works with, but there's like one that's been there for a little bit of time and one that hasn't. I don't think he's got one sound recordist he works with, or sound mixer, I guess, location mixer.
I'll just on the music, by the way, was the guy that did the Back to the Future trilogy.
Oh my god, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's
he used funny. A lot of like that was one of the things I really enjoyed. Is like they constantly reference Back to the Future in the music sense, like that, like that little like twinkle that happens and stuff like that. That all throughout it, and I feel like I even might have heard like da, 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 and that like they never finished the tune, but there was so many moments like that. Yeah,
which is probably a good point at which to talk about like references.
Yeah, I think you're right. This movie is littered with references. It's just a couple of references. Like from the first from the first sound you hear, it's obviously got like that musical reference. It was such a good beginning. Yeah, like it put you. The moment that the score started was just like I forgot what the track was, but just like threw you straight into what this movie is about. It's about about hitting particular references, about times, about like nostalgia, which like I'll talk about the story of that kind of a little bit later on. But this
it's part of why I need to watch it again, because there was a lot of Where's Wally for me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like I
remember you were telling me, like, tapped me in the shoulder, hey man, that's the thing from there.
And when I was looking at that one, it's like I must have missed 6 others.
Yeah.
So and it was so weird because, as I was saying earlier, right, like I've for a long time felt this reference culture quite exhausting. I used to love it, like back in when I was into Family Guy, so 2000.
Could you imagine you yourself back then? Like you're talking about how the reference thing is exhausting.
My mouth would have been watering. And,
yeah.
You know, I would have been so excited.
But you were looking through the movie and you were kind of spotting the references and missing a lot of others.
It's to do with the tone.
Okay, yeah.
It's really silly.
It is. And you know what? The book isn't.
The
book is really
every time I've read about the book, it sounds it just has always sounded like it takes itself quite seriously.
Yeah.
Whereas that film was like,
no,
let's have fun.
Yeah. There were a few serious
and that's
moments
what made it okay.
that could have been left serious, but they weren't. They were like almost like the music really carried it in a different direction. Kind of like Back to the Future in its own respect, like where it's a serious film, but it's not a serious film.
Yeah, I mean that was the interesting. Remember when the female lead characters, to be perfectly honest, actually, I've forgotten the characters' names. Like, it was that type of film. It was sort of like so much was visually happening, actually, that I was quite overwhelmed. And I think I felt like I was on a roller coaster and I just sort of was like, dude, chick, that guy, that person. Yeah. All right, cool, got it. Let's go.
It's like Artemis.
Artemis. How could I forget Artemis? That's a character.
Power something, not
Paracephalophosaurus.
Yeah, that was it.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter, like the main male lead.
And the Blu-ray is so close.
Yeah. What about...
Oh, yeah, she gets captured, right? And when they capture her, when they like take her and they put her in the thing, it's like the music was very sort of like Indiana Jones, fun, kind of like... reminded me of like the markets stuff from Indiana Jones, as opposed to like... They've just caught her.
Yeah, this is serious.
Yeah, but they just had this great thing of the whole time being like, just go with it and enjoy it. Have fun. That's what you're here to do. You're just here to absorb like the ride. And that's why I think all the reference stuff for me was more fun than it was like, you know, when people sort of say certain Star Wars references now, you know, I kind of go, do you know how easy that one is?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's everyone knows that and their dog. It's like,
That's actually going back into that CGI thing and the amount of references that they had to add and the detail of all those references. Could you imagine just being like, okay, we got this wide shot. We have like 300 characters. Well, let's just say that we only see 50 of them.
As long as licensing was sorted out, the artists would have been basically allowed to do what they want.
But could you imagine the research? Because you wouldn't want to just be like, oh, look, there's that robot from that thing, you know. It's like, no, what does that robot do? Like, what season were we going to go for? Like, what's the best season to go for? What was the best version of that particular robot? The laser beams, were they always blue? Or was there that season where they was red? And is that the better one? Like, that's...
Well, like, remember that I was saying, oh, there's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
And it's like the current Michael Bay movie ones.
Yeah.
Produced by, I won't accuse him of having directed those. And that's the thing, right? Like, you would have to check. Like, I bet you all the Spartans that are in it from Halo would be Halo 5 or Halo 6 Spartans, right? Yeah. Because they would be there going like, yeah, you can use them, but it better be fucking the ones that we want to push in the market at the moment. One of the things I found quite funny is, like, ILM is notorious for, because ILM, you know, it was owned by George Lucas, they would do stuff like in Star Trek, the first Star Trek film, right? You know, when they like...
Do you mean the first new Star Trek?
The first new Star, the 2009 Star Trek film. So they come out of warp, and all the other ships have been blown up. Remember, they come out like into a debris field.
Suddenly,
So something blows up, and one of the things that flies past them is R2-D2. A fully high-resolution, like, straight from the Star Wars movies, R2-D2 is in the debris and flies past.
In Star Trek.
In Star Trek.
I didn't know that.
And that's because that's the kind of shit that ILM... Like Star Wars Episode 1, when there's, like, a shot of the Senate and everyone's losing their minds, there's three guys from E.T.'s planet going... like, getting upset.
I love
because when George Lucas was there, it's like... we're going to do all this stuff. It's funny. The thing that was interesting about this film is, like, it's ILM, but, like, where was the Star Wars stuff? Because now Disney's in control. So
maybe we didn't see it.
I'm hoping, but, like,
they made that one reference to it, and I feel like that they were if there isn't any
The
references,
Millennium Falcon.
well, that's the whole thing. Like, it's like I can get you the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
It's such a rare piece of thing in this
So cool.
thing that like I can get it for you, and maybe that's was a way of them going. We couldn't get the Star Wars stuff because Disney owns it, and I'm sorry. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Look, it's not that there wasn't a smorgasbord of other things, but I mean, in terms of pop culture, you know,
one of the biggest.
it's fucking Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right.
They could get, but it was, and the other thing is, I need to watch it again. I didn't see anything from Lord of the Rings in there, and it was Warner Brothers. I was like, come on, guys, you got the fucking license. Let's do this.
Yeah, true. I guess, yeah, no, I didn't even think of that, actually. I think I remember there was that one moment.
I thought there would have been an elephant or something, like, in the final battle, you know, from the Battle of Minas Tirith in Return of the King, the gigantic elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, like, something like that, or, like, that shit, just the Ghost Army or something, that would have been cool.
Yeah, and well, actually, let's dive into, like, the story, because this is where I step in, because I read the book. Because I read the book.
Oh, sorry. This is the part where I'm not allowed to talk.
No, you're allowed to talk.
I haven't read the book.
But it really, because it refers to a lot of things you're saying. You're talking about the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, and you're wondering if it's the same person who wrote this, which you should look up by the way.
No, it wasn't. I know
it wasn't.
It wasn't David Kep.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is that they could have gone. They could have either made this into 2 or 3 movies that slowly progressed into like a series, and really stuck to the book like page for page, because it would have been, they could have done it like the way it was written is that you could do it, or you take the core concept, you strip away a lot of the things that make it serious, and you make it into this fun roller coaster ride that we just experienced. I'm not against the movie. I just will say that the book is an interesting everything. Like it's such an interesting story. It talks about the future. It talks about, you know, like the energy crisis. It talks about so much and it talks about like the life of Oasis being this, like not just a place where people go and they chill. It's like the places where people like go to school, because it's cheaper to send people to school digitally than it is and when someone has a class, then you can, you know, send them like into like let's go to Egypt, and then you go to Egypt, you know, like shit like that. And so it became cheaper for them to go to the schools there. The whole concept of the caravan things that you see where he lives, that whole idea is about like the extreme poverty, and they also talk about that being like not just one little area of the place, but like lots of people live there. That's like most people live that way. And then there are the elite, or the people that live in cities, or people that can afford it. You know, like the whole idea is like
the vertical caravan park, which in America is a very American thing, but like that's trailer trash, right? Like that's the thing. That's the derogatory term that they say about people living in trailer parks. Like, if you live in a trailer park, it's like, okay, you're basically like you're the last stop before homeless in American culture. Like that's how they think of it. So to take a caravan park and to stack it vertically, it's like, because of the density,
to be honest, it'd be cheaper just to have a huge building with tiny apartments. But whatever, let's just go away from that. But so I will say that, like, when you do, which because you will and you should read the book.
I will.
You will, because you will.
I will.
And anyone who hasn't read the book but has watched this movie will enjoy. I haven't spoiled anything about the book through this, and if I keep talking about the book, I will spoil a lot of what makes the book actually really good. Because it is quite a good book. It's an entertaining book. I'll tell you, like, later on, I'll tell you why I didn't like the one element of the book which I was like, about. But it's such a different story, and I really appreciate the idea to either go full ball or to be confident about making it a particular experience.
Yeah, I mean, if you made the interesting analog for example, is like when you read, if you've read Jurassic Park and the sequel, The Lost World, if you've read those 2 books and then you watch the films, it's like, oh, okay, yes, there are 5 things in these things that line up. Yeah. There is a park, there are dinosaurs, there is a guy called this and a guy called that and a woman called this and kids called this and a T-Rex attacks them and there's velociraptors. Aside from that,
Yeah.
It's from what you've described, it seems very similar to that, because I think basically they look at it as making a film, and the thing is, what makes a good book absolutely does not make a good film.
Well, let me take the example of The Martian. Like, I really loved that book. I don't think they had the right approach with the movie. It was a good movie, and if you hadn't read the book, it was still a good movie. But if you had read the book, they chopped out massive, tense bits of the book, which were so not even the little stuff. I can get away with the whole, like, because the whole book is written in logs. The first major sections of the books are written in logs of the person, so we don't know what's actually going on. We don't see him, and of course, you're not going to just have some log happening, and that's what the movie is. You're going to see what Matt Damon's character is doing and stuff like that. So I was completely fine with all of that. It was just they took out, I think, two major chunks out of the thing which developed tension. So much tension about survival and about this, and it made the film just be like, there's this montage of him trying to survive, and then he escapes. And it's like, what happened to survival? What happened to being on the last thread of survival? What happened to... there's so much it lost in tension.
I strongly disagree. I think, like...
Did you read the book?
Yeah.
And you strongly disagree?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, no, okay.
Carry
on.
For me, that book has three massive, like, oh my God, it's so difficult to survive bits that if they were in the film, there's only two of them in the film. When the habitat blows up.
That was one of the major ones?
That's the major one.
Mm.
And...
well, there's two more after that.
There's the obviously the getting up to the thing, but in the book there's like the tumbling over of the vehicle and him getting stuck there for a period of time. And
well, there was so it wasn't just there was the habitat, there was when trying to get to the space shuttle, or to the place, the other space shuttle, so that he could launch, and the storm that was coming at that point, which was kind of like the dual kind of tension moments. And then there was another one in there which I think had to do with when he was getting parts, and then that's when the thing tumbles over or some shit. I feel like there was those three.
That one's when he's driving to the spaceship, and he is driving up a very steep thing, and the whole vehicle rolls backwards, and he's stuck there for like a week or so. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's like,
but well, okay, so I mean, despite like, I mean, you.
But for me, the thing is, like, those things. It's like that would be to write well for film. Like, you basically go, and the tension rises, and then it goes here, and then it needs to rise up like sort of a mountain that gradually peaks. Right? It's kind of like. You go up, then you stay there for a bit, then you go up, then you stay there for a bit. But you always sort of have to like bring it in, and dips down to sort of make the audience not want to leave the cinema and like shoot themselves. From tension.
Books have allow patience.
Yeah, well, because it doesn't take you 10 minutes to get between those points.
Yeah,
it takes you however long it takes you to read it.
For me, hours or days.
Yeah, I'm a very slow reader.
Yeah,
and so that for me is like, it's okay in a book, but listening to that section, it was like, I'm gonna check out soon. Like, if that was in the film, it would have been just too much.
No, but I still feel like they didn't capture it well enough. I still feel like, look at Ready Player One and go to yourself, they took the essence of the universe of Ready Player One, and they went, okay, cool, we're not gonna follow this rule by rule, so we're gonna confidently go in a different direction and make this a little bit more fun, a little bit more exciting, and we're gonna strip away the bits that make it serious. I still feel like The Martian took out some of the moments which gave it that rise in tension that you're talking about, that like bit that kind of like keeps speaking. I'm not saying keep it all in. That's bullshit. Like, you should never keep that crap in. There's a lot of like space jargon that you don't want to keep in, but there was something about the way that film worked for me. Yeah, in the book, like, you got to be a nerd to love that stuff. And same thing with is it Artemis? The other book that he wrote, it's like, you got to be a nerd to love that shit. And the same thing goes with like The Martian. I would totally say, like, don't leave all that shit in. There's so much you can cut out, but there are like it just didn't do it for me. It felt like it peaked up and then it plateaued and then it ended. And I was like, I didn't feel the struggle in the middle. I did not feel that like, oh my shit, is he going to make it? Is he going to survive? Yeah, I read the book. I knew that he was going to make it, but it's still, they could have changed it. I mean, that last moment at the end, I wasn't sure if they would change the story or not. But like the middle ground, I just was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Oh, and we're there. Oh, how did he get from there to there? Oh, he just did it. Movie magic. I'm like, man. There's like,
I understand what you're saying, but I still feel like, okay, we're in the cinema for 2 hours by that point, dude.
Then cut off some of the habitat stuff.
No, but that was so good.
It was good, but that wasn't the best part of the thing. I think
I've watched that film like 12 times.
I've watched that movie once, and I told myself I'm not going to watch it again.
Wow.
I earned it. I'm going to watch it one more time.
I think I watched it 5 times and then read the book, and then...
I watched it like soon after I read the book, so I could be very, very biased here, but I just enjoyed the book so much.
I found myself groaning from about 2/3 in. I found myself groaning every time I went to his logs.
Really?
I found it because it was formulaic. It was like, I did this and then I did the thing and then this stuff happened. And I'm like, it's not that it's something different that he's doing. That is it had first time writer issues. That's honestly, that's what it was. It was just like when you're writing, like I know this when I like watch back at my own stuff and I go, oh, I fucked up the dialogue in that scene for sure because I didn't do changing tactics or something, basic shit. Like that was the stuff that he had so much repetition of tactic in that book where it was just like, yeah, I get it. He got a thing and he's going to tell me how he figured it out and then he's going to work his way out of the situation and then the thing's going to go back to Earth. And I'm so much more looking forward to hearing what the people on Earth are doing. Because it was like there was...
That's so interesting because I thought the Earth stuff was kind of boring.
His problem-solving approach was never different. It was always the same. Why? Because it was an engineering mathematical approach.
Yeah, and I really
It's linear. That. Yeah, but it's like I find that stuff really interesting and amazing, but like not 30 times in a book. Like, and that's what happens in the book. So like, yeah, 2/3 of the way through, I was much more looking forward to hearing from either the crew coming back to Mars or Earth. And then I was like slogging through the pages of him because he was just really boring at that point to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is interesting because that's the part of the book that they didn't have in the film.
Yeah, which is why I'll watch the movie again just to, now it's been a long time since I read the book. So I'd love to just revisit that film and then see what I think. But going back to Ready Player One...
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, right? What movie are we talking about? First, I felt like we were just talking about Steven Spielberg, and now we're talking about Ready Player One. Okay, so Ready Player One, I feel like if they hadn't done what they did, and they tried to cram in all the amazingness that came from the book, I thought, it would have been lost. In the same way, to me, The Martian is, but I imagine there's other examples of books that are like, but you've taken...
Jurassic, honestly, there's way more than one Spielberg. Lincoln, the book, the film Lincoln, is taken from a chapter in a book.
All right.
The entire film is a chapter from an extraordinary book. Team of Rivals, fucking great book. But it's a chapter. Mm-hmm. Because the overwhelming thing you get from this book is who as a person, as a character, the essence of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
You
remember what we're doing here, right? We're talking about Ready Player One.
Yeah. But it's the same thing. Like, it's that thing of what's the most important aspect of that book.
Yeah.
Spielberg's film Lincoln does that. Yeah. Jurassic Park does the same thing.
And that's the only reason why that movie gets away with it, I think. Because I think if it didn't go balls to the wall with that kind of more like lighter side of things and kind of like more of just an adventure film, I would have been disappointed. It was a fun ride, and that's great.
It's good to hear that. I think I was surprised that it was as fun as it was. I expected it to be visually awe-inspiring and amazing and all these kind of things. I expected that stuff. I didn't expect for it to not push me to take it seriously.
I will say one thing about it though. I felt like the love aspect of it was very rushed.
Oh, totally.
Like, and then it happened, and then I love you, and it's like I get why, to be honest. Like, as a working in the industry, I can understand why it kind of was put to that. They cut it down to such a point where that's what they needed to happen, and it was like character-wise, he obviously was shooting the gun too early, and he kind of like did say "I love you" too quickly because that was his thing. He's just like infatuated with this person. But in my head, I'm like, oh, I just felt like, okay, really, guys, he could have axed that whole arc out of it and or slowed it down, or
yeah, I think the only reason they kept it was to draw a parallel between him and what's the name of the guy that invented the Oasis, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
They wanted to draw a parallel between the two, and then have him not repeat the same thing.
Yeah, I see what you get.
That line isn't particularly strong in the film at all.
No.
I
didn't mind his parallel, like not the main characters, but the guy who made the world. I didn't mind that being. I didn't love it, but I didn't mind that being like there's that kind of line to it. I didn't get the whole friendship thing because I felt like that was tacked on at the end. It was like, it's about friendship, and that's why he did it. And it's like, oh, no, I didn't really get that vibe. It could have been.
They had that one scene earlier on, but the majority of it was there was a lot of tell and not show.
Yeah.
It's the show don't tell thing. It's like there was a lot of tell don't show, but
yeah.
Again, it comes back to what's this movie trying to do, and
that's right.
Like, do we want the movie to be 25 minutes longer to fit that shit in? No,
definitely not.
Because
I wouldn't mind them going hard into the book and doing 2 movies. I would have been okay with that.
But the thing is, like, to me, that's more like
the book has 2.
Why not make a TV show instead? Like, why not make a 10-part series where you can do it like?
It would be too much for that.
Really?
It's in the book. It kind of like you could break up each major moment into the keys. Really, like you could go like 1 key, 2 key, and final. You could do it in 3 movies, but I almost feel like it'd be boring in 6 hours as a trilogy. But there are like in the book, there are kind of you could split it in half and there is kind of like the main character arc has a moment in the middle where it's like, oh, I would happily drop it there and pick up the next movie and watch it, or wait another year and watch a movie. You could do it and keep all the themes and the pacing and everything. I'm happy I don't care that they went this way. I actually don't mind it at all because I would have been bored shitless.
One of the key differences like between books and films, right, is the fact that for a writer to give you a sense, surely at least the first chapter is setting the scene for you in that book, right?
Oh my God, the book's so good. You got to read the book.
The difference is a film can do that in a shot. A single shot can show you that. And that is the thing, is that, a book might be, say it's like 400 pages long. It's probably like 200 pages or whatever. But like, say something is 400 pages long. They spend 100 pages getting into universe, introducing the characters, saying all those. It's like, that's 3 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
The time spent on things is totally distorted. Between the two.
It's the hardest thing to do, to marry a book and a movie.
And that's the thing. It's like, you might have this amazing sequence that gets all this stuff, and when you've read the book, you have this memory of how much time you got to spend in each little thing and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, that's your imagination. With the assistance, obviously, being completely spurred by the writer. Whereas, like, the filmmaker can go, cool, that shot went for 8 seconds, and, all that stuff that they spent 14 pages on, done.
Yeah, that's what it did, yeah.
And so I think that's the thing, is that you just have this huge distortion between the two. And so when you go to adapt, it's like, okay. And also, it's just like...
Well, we talked about it in that other podcast about video games and storytelling and how we're still waiting for that revolution. It's the same thing with movies and books. They're different mediums, and so I don't think there's any argument. It's great to see
two mediums come together in a good way where there's a harmony that exists. But generally speaking, they're never going to be alike. They're never going to be the same. They're always going to be in some way odd or disappointing or disjointed or some shit. So it's like, and it's good that this film, if it went the Lord of the Rings route, that would have been fine. If it went the route that it did, it was fine. If they went in the middle and they tried to do both in the same film, it would have been garbage.
I think one of the things is, like, if you went the Lord of the Rings way, it's like the number one thing that would have happened would have been, okay, you don't get Spielberg. He doesn't do that stuff. So, there's that guy off the list. It's like, that was brilliantly handled as a film.
Yeah.
Having not read the book, it's like that's still just as a film. That was such a great handling of that story. And one of the things I really enjoyed was like the visual contrast, the visual similarities it has with his other like futuristic film Minority Report. And the thing that's so funny is like Minority Report is a really fucking serious film. And that was the thing I think I really enjoyed about this was it was this future film where it was just like woo woo woo.
Yeah.
Despite like there was a lot at stake, like, but you got it. And you really felt like it was just a very traditional sort of story, people up against the odds. Are they going to win? Yes. Awesome.
Yay, good feelings.
Yeah. And that was and I think that when he looked at it as a series of beats, the source material, it's kind of like, okay, which ones do we put in the film? And you just sort of go with those things. I think I thoroughly enjoyed it. And one of the things I took a great deal of joy out of it was that, Spielberg's, I don't know, 74, something like that. And for him to have something put together, obviously with the assistance of many, 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 many other people, as they have a great ILM, have a fantastic special feature on the DVD of Star Wars Episode 3, which is like a 1 minute, I think it's called like a breakdown of 1 minute of this film. And they go through and then they like list how many people worked on it. And it was like 1,200 people. That's how many people it takes to make 1 minute of the Star Wars movie.
Jeez.
And so like Spielberg obviously has like that team of 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 people, whatever it is, from end to end, from him right down to the runner. Those are the people that make this film with his vision. And the thing that's interesting about it is like, you getting all those people involved to put all the things on screen, have all these things happen. And you just go, this guy is so with it. Like, you don't make that film with all the Spartans from Halo and all the people from Gundam and all this. Like, I mean, Spielberg is a geek, right? He's quite a nerdy dude. But I doubt that, I don't know, but massive fan, but I've never gotten the sense that he's that broad. Not many people are. And
except for the writer of the book.
Right. But I think that, so much of it was there and so much of it was relevant and so much was like culturally powerful and the Firefly stuff. And, that blew my mind. It's like, I love this idea of Spielberg being like, oh yeah, the thing from Firefly. And you're just like, you watch fucking Firefly? Yeah. It reminded me of watching Mad Max Fury Road for the first time. And I just sat there and I was like, George Miller's 70 something. And maybe he was 70 at the time. I can't remember, but he's 70 something when the film came out. And I just went, how did a guy in his 70s make this? Like this super awesome action film that like a 14-year-old would be like, that was fucking sick.
Yeah.
Like, how do you have that youth in you? How do you have that energy in you to be that chaotic and that big and that excited about telling this story that is but should be so detached from you because of our ageist stereotyping of older generations, that we always think of them as detached from understanding what we're doing. And that's one of the things I really loved about this film, is that at no point did it feel like the person who was at the head of the ship was like, I don't know what that is, but
throw it in.
Whatever.
Yeah. The kids will love it.
Yeah, it felt like at every step of the way it was like, I bet you Spielberg knows a lot more like teen lingo than I fucking know. Like, that's how I felt about the film. And that really excited me because it made me feel like, it made me feel happy that I someone I admire so much was having such a great time, because it looked like a film that someone had a lot of fun making.
I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun, and the moment I realized after the first couple of scenes where I'm like, okay, this isn't a recreation, I was like, okay, cool, now I can get into this in a different way. And then I could just enjoy the moments that were similar, but then not be too upset by the fact that it's totally, the tone is completely different. So I had a good time watching it. I just loved the spectacle. To be honest, if I'd watch that movie again only because of the spectacle, because that was just the all the references, the characters, the CGI, all that stuff is just like, it's so layered and littered throughout the whole film that I just enjoyed it for just that. And the sound design, brilliant. Got to listen in 5.1 because of your setup.
Sorry, not 7.1, I'm sorry.
Well, you bastard. And it's just, yeah, I had a great time. And that's exactly what it should have been. I had a great time watching this movie. When I was reading the book, I remember being like, this would be an awesome movie. This would be an awesome kind of like, this would just be fun to watch. Despite the fact that it's a serious film, a serious book, and a serious, like, it makes some serious points, and I think it's really good for that reason. But I said to myself, this is to actually just be a fun movie. And it was, in the creation of it. So yeah, that's what I think about it. So yeah, I don't know. Is that all you want to say? I feel like we've dived into it quite a lot and talked a lot about not this movie.
Yeah. Well, I guess like talking around it, talking near it.
No, but anything else you want to unleash on?
Yeah, performances were good. Really good.
Yeah, the performance.
Overall, I thought. And I think that...
it's sad that we can't, like, because I mean, you could have a whole big discussion about it, but to be honest, the conversation to have about this film is the CGI, the references, and the directing. Those are the three main points. Oh, sorry, and the book reference and the fact that it's, adapted from a book.
Because it's a spectacle.
Yeah,
pop culture thing,
and the actors didn't do a bad job. I really loved the main, like, what's it called, the guy who created the game, the Oasis game.
Oh, he's a brilliant actor.
I thought he did a great performance in it, even from referring to the book. He didn't remind me of the guy in the book, but the way he performed was like, it was great. All the performances were really good. I feel bad because I feel like I should be giving them more credit because they did all an amazing job, but it just wasn't the point of the film.
No, and again, for me, it always. Not always, but it fell yet again under this thing of like, I just feel like Spielberg, or his work these days, always comes across as that aspect of it's not hard.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that it isn't. I mean, clearly from his own descriptions of how he feels on set that we've discussed, like he's freaking out when he's on set.
Yeah, of course.
And it isn't easy, but. It just looks so easy. I mean, that's just experience. That's just knowing how to handle stuff. Yeah. And it's one of the things I will say is like, it's really lovely to watch that film as he does when he does his 2 projects at a time thing. That film was made around the same time as The Post, and that's just a straight drama. It's great to see that contrast, 2 films coming out right near each other, both Spielberg, and look at how he handles them. And, one of them is just so incredibly about performance.
Yeah.
So heavily reliant on performance. And in this film, the performances are there holding up poles in the tent to keep the roof up. But the pole in the middle is the spectacle.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of what I feel about, like, I know it sounds really weird, but Back to the Future. I really enjoyed that movie. I thought the acting was great, but that's not what I would talk about when it comes to Back to the Future.
Yeah, I feel very sorry for the person who takes Back to the Future incredibly seriously.
Yeah, right.
Like, that shit's fun.
It's exactly what it is.
That shit's meant to make you forget about life.
That's not to say that those actors did a terrible job. They did a great job. Phenomenal job, but it just wasn't a movie about those performances.
That was ridiculously over the top. It's caricatured.
Though this wasn't too ridiculous. Like, it wasn't over the top, but it was certainly
That was big stuff.
There was, yeah.
It was big performances, and they were quite silly in parts, but it was within the context of the film. It was like that's exactly what it was. Yeah, I loved it. I thought I would not want to watch it again. That's what I thought going into it. I went, I'm really excited to watch this. I think it'll be okay, but it's going to be like visually incredible. But aside from that, I'm just going to be like, it was so fucking fun.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
was lovely.
Alrighty, well then let's wrap that shit up. Thank you very much for watching the movie and having dinner and doing a podcast.
Thank you, Piat.
And
Interview someone else for God's sake.
no, don't tell me what to do. This is my podcast.
I can I could get Juno and just sort of like, get her, and I'll get her to. The issue is that when you talk to Juno, as with cats,
Meow.
no, they primarily communicate with their tail, so it's not really good for podcasting.
True, we'll just hear the wind. That'll be all.
Interestingly, how they see in the dark.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's for another podcast.
No, we'll do it now.
No. Thank you very much. And bye.